Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for spending your Friday lunch hour with us. We're excited for today's Achievable Housing in Action Lunch and Learn in collaboration with our Forest Futures initiative. We're hosting this lunch and learn to explore steps we can take both in our homes and across our community to become more fire resistant. To kick things off, please share your name and one thing you're hoping to learn or to discuss today in the chat box. We'd love to hear from you and get to know your thoughts. Some questions were submitted in advance and they focus around home hardening and around insurance. And so hopefully we will address those with our speakers in just a bit. My name is Christina Kind. I am Program Director at the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. Joining me today in facilitation are my colleagues, Program Manager Maeve Donovan and Forest Futures, thanks Maeve, and Forest Futures Director, Program Director Erica Valdez. We're also joined by our engagement and communications team, Ashley Beck and Kaylee Mack. Before we get started, if there are any members of the media joining us today, could you please introduce yourself in the chat box? In addition to media coverage, we will also record today's session and email the recording to you afterward. The Achievable Housing Lunch and Learn series is an ongoing virtual hour-long event where participants are encouraged to bring their lunch. So hopefully some of you are eating, and also a willingness to learn and engage in conversations around housing. We've explored a range of topics from vacancy taxes to understanding key housing terms. We're talking today about housing materials, insurance, and home hardening because protecting homes from wildfire helps keep people safe, housing affordable, and our community resilient. This feels especially important as we head into fire season and as we look to neighboring areas that are in the midst of rebuilding after catastrophic wildfires. Next slide, please. What this session will not focus on is disaster preparedness, and that includes information like how to pack a to-go bag or understanding evacuation zones. For those important topics, we encourage you to join us again on July 11th. You can register now using the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can visit TTCF's event calendar to register. Over the next hour, we're going to hear brief presentations from our speakers. Eric Horntvedt is not here yet, but will hopefully be joining us very shortly. He will be talking about home hardening. Eric, we have you. Great, wonderful. Good to see you. He is the Wildfire Prevention Manager at Truckee Fire Protection District. We also have Jonathan Kusel, who is the Executive Director of the Sierra Institute for Community Environment, and Ryan Valdez, Managing Director at RockRose Risk. After their presentations, we hope to have about 20 minutes for conversation, questions, and comments. Next slide, Maeve. To help facilitate that engagement, here are a few guidelines. 1, please silence your microphone when not speaking to minimize background noise. 2, we want this to feel like a connected space, so please keep your camera on if you are able to. 3, we'll address questions after the presentations, but feel free to post your questions in the chat during the presentations, or if you'd like, you can just wait until the very end and ask them out loud. As I said earlier, I am with the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. Our mission is to bring together trusted partners to align strategies and inspire philanthropy to nurture a resilient community and environment. If you could go back, Maeve, please. Thanks. In 2008, during a time of heightened tension in our community, we made a promise called Speak Your Piece. This initiative aims to establish shared values and agreements that help prevent harm and ensure everyone's needs are respected. Today, we encourage everyone to embrace Speak Your Piece as a way to foster a respectful dialogue and create a safe space. And you can read those agreements in the visual on the right. Next slide, Maeve. Today's discussion brings together 2 key initiatives of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation: housing and forest resilience. As we implement our strategic plan, we're focused on connecting people and place, and we want to ensure that we are in tune to the people who live here, your needs, your health, and your ability to thrive through our community and workplace. We also want to pay attention to the places where you work, live, and play. And so we're working to ensure that our forests and landscapes are healthy, protected, and resilient, as well as always looking for ways to improve housing access and affordability. We have a housing program that has been built on the influence impact of the Mountain Housing Council, which the Community Foundation convened from 27 to 2023. And that coalition of 29 partners was really focused on improving access to housing and improving housing affordability. We also have a Forest Futures program focused on protecting our communities, improving forest resilience, and driving infrastructure and innovation to enable forest restoration. So with that context in mind, I'm excited to hand it over to my colleague, Erica Valdez, to share more about how our forest resiliency work connects to today's conversation and what's ahead. Thanks, Erica.
Thanks so much, Christina. And it's so great to see all of you here with us today. My name is Erica Valdez, and I'm the Forest Futures Program Director, and I'm thrilled about how today's topic bridges forest resilience and local housing solutions. Before we dive into today's presentations, I'll provide some brief framing. As we've seen in catastrophic wildfires growing in frequency and severity around the state and broader region, consequences can be devastating for ecosystems and communities alike. We've seen how raging fires can decimate entire neighborhoods and towns, and how messy the aftermath can be. The stress of going through such a disaster, contending with displacement, the challenges of rebuilds, navigating insurance if you still have coverage, long-term housing insecurity and economic insecurity, the inequality that can be exacerbated in recovery efforts, the seas of blackened matchstick forests that struggle to regrow, and so on. On a more positive note, we've also seen how upfront investments in resilience have significant payoffs, how neighborhoods near South Lake, for example, survived the Angora and Calder fires because of the nearby forest thinning and restoration that had already happened that knocked down flame heights, and because of the defensible space and home hardening measures that helped firefighters in saving structures. Today, we'll talk about building this community resilience from a few different angles. First of all, what can we do on a home and neighborhood level to increase resilience? What does it mean to be ready for fire? Second of all, we know that a necessary first step in making forests more resilient to wildfires is returning them back to a healthy density, as they are currently about 10 times more crowded than they should be due to legacies of fire suppression and ecological disruption from Comstock era clearcutting, making the fires that have historically been a natural part of the ecosystem much hotter, deadlier, and more devastating. We also know that forest restoration efforts are held up by a critical bottleneck, a lack of places that can process the wood that's being thinned. We'll hear about a new solution that not only makes use of the ecologically thinned wood to drive restoration efforts, but in a beautiful win-win, turns it into a building material that's inherently fire resistant and can help build fire-hardened communities. And third of all, we're going to talk about a practical step on many of your minds: insurance. How is the insurance landscape shifting, and what new solutions might be coming down the road that both take into account and incentivize defensible space, home hardening, and forest restoration efforts? We are so honored to have our three speakers here with us today, and to have all of you in the room to engage in discussion around the future of wildfire resilience. For those of you who are interested in diving deeper and exploring what it means to work in this space, we are hosting an event on Thursday, May 22nd at 5:30 at the Truckee Rec Center. And this is for anyone who's interested in diving deeper into what forest and fire related careers might mean for yourself, or for any young people in your life, or just for the future of the local economy. With that, I will pass it over to Maeve to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Erica. So our first speaker, we have Eric Horntvedt here from Truckee Fire Protection District. Eric is widely recognized as a leader in forest and fire management in both for developing innovative solutions, as well as working in fire prevention and sustainable forestry. Since 2018, he's played an active role in advancing holistic adaptive strategies for community risk reduction and forest fuels management throughout the Tahoe Truckee region. TGCF is thrilled that we're able to support Truckee Fire's efforts, including contributing to the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, funding fuels reduction projects, supporting community outreach, and fostering regional collaboration. So Eric, I would love to talk to you a little bit about home hardening.
Yeah, thank you so much. And as always, great job with setting the stage and, kicking off the topic so eloquently. I'm going to get my screen shared here while I start an intro. If I could just get someone to just give me looks good. You can see my screen. Perfect.
Thumbs up.
Cool. So I want to dig in just a little bit more. So I'm Eric Horntvedt. I'm the Wildfire Prevention Manager at Truckee Fire. I manage Measure T, so that Community Wildfire Protection Tax Measure, and all of our various community programs, right? Really aimed at improving community resilience to wildfire. So we're really looking at defensible space and improving structure ignitability, fuel breaks, forest management, evacuation route improvements, kind of that whole suite. But today, I'm going to take off my forestry hat and my defensible space nerd hat, and we're really going to look at the structure. So thanks, Erica, for setting the environment. We've seen a massive change in destruction just in this last decade. And uniquely, that lines up when I graduated college and entered my career, first in wildland firefighting and now in community resilience. But the stats are against us. And I think most of us in this line of work are under the impression that it's going to continue to get worse before it gets better, right? We really have 150 years of mismanagement of our forests. To couple that forest densification issue and having all this fuel available in our forests, at the same time, over the 150 years, we chose to build all of our communities and infrastructure right in this very high fire hazard severity zone. So we're the problem to blame. It really is a classic case of anthropogenic cause and effect. But the good news is there's a lot of work we can do to get back to a state of resilience and learn how to live with fire. So with that, to sum these up, just so people understand maybe the severity of the issue, is that in about the last decade, California has actually seen 15 of its largest, 15 of its deadliest, 15 of the most destructive, and 9 of the deadliest wildfires in the state's history. So things have definitely exacerbated and became to a total challenge and total issue, really culminating in this last decade. As far as where we go with codes and regulations and what happens, right, it's always in response to a calamity or disaster. So the state of California and the fire service in general and the building code and the insurance industry, right, they've always done a great job about putting together new assembly bills, new Senate bills, new acts of legislation in Congress to drive code in the right way. The problem with that is the code usually only impacts new construction and new developments. It doesn't solve the issue for the 15,000 homes that we have in our Truckee and Donner Summit communities that were built primarily from the 1940s until the early 2000s. So with that, I'm really going to focus in on what can we do to our mountain homes to retrofit and improve their resilience to wildfire. So I'm really focusing in around this year of 2007. This is the year that the state passed wildland urban interface building codes, meaning if your home was built 2008 or newer, there's a really high likelihood that your home has many of these features, and maybe there's some small tweaks and improvements still available for you. But the vast majority of our homes, probably about 12,000 of them in the Truckee and Donner Summit communities, not to mention another, probably similar amount in the North Tahoe area, have a lot of work they could do to retrofit their homes and become a hardened home. Fun fact, just by having a non-combustible roof, so metal or asphalt or any of those, and a perfectly dialed in zone 0, that first 5 feet around your house, you double the likelihood that your home survives a wildfire. And this is because the leading cause of home ignition is embers, right? These small embers, think about it like a blizzard of firebrands, are extending well in front of the fire, sometimes as much as miles in front of the fire, showering down on your house like a hailstorm, landing on your roof, your siding, and basically accumulating in this area right around your home. And a lot of the times these embers aren't directly igniting your house, but they are igniting something near your home that's receptive. Think pine needles, think combustible mulch. And then that small ignition finds its way to, say, a landscaping shrub. That shrub catches on fire. Now you have, radiant heat, convective heat, and direct flame contact that causes that home ignition. So there really is this pathway. And so that's what we're going to really dig into is how can we break up this pathway? How can we really harden your structure in the first 5 feet around it so that we can protect our homes from igniting from embers? So what I want to do today is, instead of giving you a presentation that I curated, is I'm sharing a resource that everyone can use again. So CAL FIRE is California's Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, and they've put together this interactive home hardening chart that you all can reference back to again. This is really just the tip of the iceberg as far as what needs to be done. It doesn't really dig into the implications of how to do it, what materials to buy. It's just the concept. So we got the link up in here. It's fire.ca.gov/home-hardening. So where we're going to start is actually maybe the opposite of what you think. We always talk about our house and we start top down. Interesting enough, our homes are built so that when a single drop of water lands on your roof, that water will run down the construction down to the ground. So every facet of construction, the way every piece is overlapped, is meant to resist water intrusion into your home. The wild part about wildfire is that fire burns from the ground up. So every joint, every overlap in your home construction is vulnerable to being entered by fire because fire moves in the opposite direction of water. So keep that in mind as we're moving through here. So I want to start with some of the more achievable home hardening upgrades that align well with defensible space efforts and with insurance. And the first one is just digging into zone 0. So this is that first 5 feet around your house. This zone really, you need to think non-combustible. This zone really needs to shift towards hardscaping. So concrete, pavers, gravel, bare dirt would work in a fire world. It doesn't balance water quality very well. But we really need to shift our lens of what we're putting next to the house. Gone are the days of this picture on the right. We can't have wooden fences attached to the house. We're not planting juniper and arbor vitae and decorative, super hazardous plants near our house to blend it into the landscape. Combustible mulch is totally off the table, right? You're creating a perfect catcher's mitt for embers to land in and ignite and spread that fire towards the plants. So as you're thinking about projects around your house, this is a really easy way to start. Remove the pine needles and leaves and lumber and materials away from your home and think about an improvement project that gets it easy to maintain and you would feel really comfortable that nothing could ignite this zone. As we start moving closer to the structure, we get into these decks, right? Every house in Truckee and Tahoe has to have a wood deck. It's just the way it is in our mountain communities. The first step is one, just keep it really clean, right? Think about what you're storing on the deck. So maybe reducing outdoor patio furniture with combustible cushions and things like that. If your deck's getting old and rotten and spongy, let's spend a little bit more money and upgrade to a non-combustible deck. Maybe putting back in that softwood deck or redwood deck isn't the right move in these very fire hazard areas, but upgrading to like a Class A Trex or similar product just gives you a little bit more protection in that really close to home area. Moving back towards the structure, another easy piece and a really big issue in these wildfires is fences. This is coming down the pipe from state law as well. This is going to end up being incorporated into a defensible space inspection, is that we need to remove the first 5 feet or 10 feet of wooden fences away from our structure. So if you have a privacy fence or a gate that's all wood connecting to your structure, that really becomes a wick. So if your neighbor's house catches on fire because their defensible space isn't good, you now have a perfect wick leading right back to your house. And so this comes from numerous fire damage investigation reports and studies, is that just by removing that first 5 to 10 feet of fence and replacing it with a metal chain link, or as you're seeing in this main picture, a wrought iron fence, you're able to break up that wick and stop that other pathway of fire from being able to connect to your house. Other things we get into on home hardening that are easy upgrades, roofs aren't a major problem here anymore, right? The era of wood shake roofs, we're pretty much down to very few in our neighborhoods just because they've aged out. If you have a wood shake roof, I'm surprised if you even have insurance to start with. But it's time to upgrade that thing. It's a massive vulnerability. You basically put kindling on top of your house that embers will ignite during a fire. So upgrade to any of our Class A or non-combustible roofs. Those could be metal, asphalt, comp shingle, tile, things of those nature.
And Eric, we have about 1 more minute for.
You got it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple other high priority items to think about is unique construction. A lot of houses have dormers or interesting areas where the roof overlaps with the siding, and these are really vulnerable. You can see the picture on the right where you have a lot of leaves or pine needles accumulated right next to wood siding. Those areas are critical to maintain. And then some other upgrades that we dig into are double pane windows, You can always upgrade your siding or upgrade the first 4 feet with metal or stones wainscoting. And that list goes on. So great resource. I'll let you all use this, and I will pass it on to some of our industry professionals to really dig into some more topics.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Eric. You were such a resource with home hardening, and thank you for providing that CAL FIRE resource as well. I've put it in the chat, and we will also share it with the recording that will be made available. Next, we will be talking with Jonathan Kusel. So Jonathan Kusel's work at the Sierra Institute for Community and Environment spans mass timber innovation, housing solutions, landscape restoration, workforce development, and more. Under his leadership, the Sierra Institute has been instrumental in helping rural communities thrive by bringing people, ideas, and resources together to improve socioeconomic conditions and natural resource management. Dr. Kusel and the Sierra Institute have been at the forefront of conversations about cross-laminated timber, or CLT, and its potential for wildfire mitigation and recovery. Today, the Institute is spearheading the development of California's first full-scale CLT manufacturing operation, to which TTCF made its largest ever investment, a $1 million contribution. Jonathan, we are so happy to have you today, and I will pass it over to you.
Jonathan, I think you're still on mute.
I am. Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be here. And I was just saying, Eric, great job laying the groundwork on how to manage grounds and existing structures. I'm going to shift it a little bit in terms of focusing on new structures, and I'm going to specifically talk about cross-laminated timber or mass timber generically. So next slide, please. So mass timber is comprised of different products, and the focus here is going to be on CLT, cross-laminated timber. I'll talk about that. Dowel laminated timber is basically stacked timber with dowels that hold them together, and then there's nail laminated timber, which, as you can imagine, they're attached via nails. And nails can be aluminum, metal, or wood, holding this material together. Next slide, please. So mass wood, here I'm talking about CLT, and I'll constantly refer to CLT. And what you can see here is our 3 panels on the left-hand side, or 3 layers, if you will. Start with the first layer, and the next layer is perpendicular to that. So it can be made out 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s, and then you're gluing in terms of a laminate. So cross-laminated timber, and you see on the right picture, the 2 rightmost pictures, one is a diagram of what the 3 layers are like, and then above that is an actual panel, though it's a couple of sections there so you can see it. Next slide, please. Interestingly enough, when you talk about Chicago fire or other great fires of the 19th century and even somewhat of the 20th century, we have lots of buildings destroyed by fire, and it has made people very reticent to use wood. But CLT is a horse of a different color, if you will. It is mass timber, it is large timber, and it is actually quite resistant to fire. I show you this because this is just a high-rise building, not what I'm going to talk about mostly here, but you can see the many layers in that panel that's being dropped onto this next floor. And the worker on the left is holding on to essentially a glue lam column or beam where you can, again, laminate a bunch of laminates together, or stock the 2x4s, 2x6s, and they make one thick post. Now you say, well, wait a minute, that can burn. Next slide, please. This is the very first full cross-laminated timber building erected in California, and we did it in Quincy. And it was actually quite fun to do. You can see the panels being loaded in place. A local work crew, folks said, no, you got to get folks from Sacramento or somewhere else to build this. And we said, no, we think local workers can handle it just fine. And they did. And it meant $1 million going into the local economy. Why did we build this building? We put a biomass boiler in here. So you can see the panels. This whole building, 30 by 60 building, was erected in 2 days. Screws were put in the 3rd day. And that's what you'll notice as you look around the building, there's not much wood waste because it's all designed and fabricated at a manufacturing facility. Next slide, please. There's the boiler. The fun thing about this boiler, so you can see the building. We bring people to show them the boiler. It burns biomass from the forest. It heats that building in the upper right-hand corner, 55,000 square foot building. And this is now being done by the North Star Community Services District. They're going at a larger scale to utilize material. They came over and said, we want to do exactly the same things that you have an opportunity to do a bigger one. But we bring folks there to see the boiler. It also makes a little bit of electricity, and they then look at the building and then stare at the building and forget about the boiler because it's a beautiful building. Next slide, please. Dixie Fire, and you all know of Caldor Fire. Devastating fires. We lost the town of Greenville. Not going to dwell on that for the moment, other than to say this is part of the recovery effort of Greenville and thinking about how do we rebuild after fires? How do we rebuild in a much more fire-safe manner? Next slide. So this is standard conventional stick frame construction, and you see 2x4s or 2x6s in the rightmost panel. When fire gets around those 2x4s and 2x6s, they burn very easily and entirely, and resulting in loss of any structural integrity. And there's some other layers there, but they don't do much in terms of preventing wildfire or general fire. Next slide, please. So this is a cross-laminated timber panel, and the rightmost panel, you can see it's multiple layers. And you can't see it very well, but this is a block of a mass timber panel. And we build houses, the blocks of the laminates are roughly 5¼ inches. That building we built in Quincy, there were 5 layered panels for the walls and a 7-layer panel for the roof. And then we have 5 to 9 inches of insulation that's non-combustible with Corten steel on the outside of that. Next slide, please. This shows you the advantage or the powers of CLT. You see the burn, that's the char layer, and it's been tested. And what's interesting, when fire comes in contact with this material, it creates this char layer. And char actually resists fire. In an evaluation of, there's been a lot of studies of this, and the char layer, you don't have to go very far down, and the temperature is far less than the surface. And then as you go further and further down, you have very little temperature gradient. It still holds the coolness because of the thickness and the density. So you can see here that you retain the structural integrity. Now, these are multiple pieces there, so you're looking at 3 different pieces that were burned, but critically, it's the structural integrity that's maintained. And when you burn CLT, depending on the species, but in general, you only burn about an inch, inch and a half every hour. So they have done really well in 2- and 3-hour burn tests. Next slide, please. So this is the result of some of our work. And this is a 1-bedroom home. In the middle is a 3-bedroom home. And on the right side is a 2-bedroom home. So we said, let's put some models together. Let's see if we can't build this. This is post-Dixie Fire. All 3 of these buildings are in Quincy. Next slide, please. And this is the 1-bedroom inside. They're beautiful. They're great aesthetic qualities to working with CLT when you can have the wood exposed like that. Next slide, please. This again now is looking at one of the other buildings. It's a 2-bedroom building on the left and the 3-bedroom building on the right. Some people say, well, why don't you just build it out of metal or concrete? I don't know about you, but I'm not super attracted to living in a metal building or a concrete building. But what's interesting is that they too burn, melt, or deform. So steel melts at around 1500 degrees centigrade, but will begin to deform at about 400 degrees centigrade. And it collapses at that 12 to 1500 degrees centigrade. So I don't have to say much about the World Trade Centers and the impact of that, but they collapse because the structural integrity was lost in the buildings as a result of the heat. Concrete begins to disintegrate around 600 degrees centigrades. Same thing with construction brick, fails at around 600 degrees centigrade. The advantage again of CLT, is that it burns, chars, and it actually prevents continued burning to a certain degree. There is no product that's fireproof, but CLT is highly fire resistant, which is why we're advocating building with it. It's not the only reason. Next slide, please. So we said beyond the houses, the Mountain Maidu people and Roundhouse Council lost the Indian Education Center in Greenville. We said, let's build a structure, and we worked with them to design a structure, and they said, can you do a roundhouse? So this is a roundhouse made out of mass timber and CLT specifically, and you can see the construction here and that opening at the top lower right picture. That is at the summer solstice, the sun will come through there on June 21, directly midday. Next slide, please. And so here's a celebration. We weren't quite done, but you can see the metal that will rust and brown, and then you see some of the layers in the insulation, but the celebration of the opening. Next slide, please. And so what's really fun, we said, since we have built structures using wood from 4 different locations, including Canada, we said, why don't we make panels ourselves so we can build homes using California wood from our forest? No, we don't need massive trees. We can use wood that needs to come out of the forest in terms of thinning the forest. So this is going to be delivered here in October, November, here being Crescent Mills, California, Northern Sierra. And yes, thank you, TTCF, for a very sizable contribution in helping bring this project home. We're still working on bringing some of the funding needed to do this, but 1 year from now, we will be selling CLT panels for new home building. And we know beyond Greenville, there's many other areas. There are also CLTs being used in very high-end homes. And we're starting conversations with folks in LA as well. So in high fire risk areas, this is a great product to use. And the other advantage, so for us, it's about, with Greenville being devastated, it's about bringing jobs back to the area. It's about using material to help make forests safer. It is about rebuilding community, and it is about building carbon smart homes using mass wood or CLT. So that's it for now. Happy to entertain questions. I see a few came up, and I look forward to responding to them later. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you in particular for your visionary leadership when it comes to mass timber, but also your thoughtful implementation and how they support our rural communities. And up next, we'll be talking with Ryan Valdez. And Ryan Valdez is the managing director of RockRose Risk, which is an innovative firm that serves as a risk translation layer between commercial and public sector entities in high wildfire risk areas, and is a customized insurtech ecosystem. RockRose Risk collaborates with local fire districts, including CAL FIRE, universities, and leading wildfire experts to integrate advanced risk modeling with cutting-edge AI-powered insurance solutions that are grounded in real-world intelligence. Ryan was introduced to us by Anna Klövsted, Vice Mayor of the town of Truckee, as a forward-thinking leader with bold vision to transform the insurance industry. His work addresses the growing insurance challenges that are facing wildfire-prone communities with practical and impactful solutions. Ryan, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, man. That was a mouthful. Appreciate that intro. So yeah, so just personally a little bit about my background, and just thank you everybody. I know it's lunchtime and I'm the last speaker, but I really appreciate everybody joining. So I have over 20 years experience in the industry. I started off my career as an outside catastrophe adjuster for a large carrier, traveling across the country, starting a year after Katrina, helping residential and commercial folks who were impacted by major catastrophe events. And then I've spent time across the enterprise in various roles, catastrophe response strategies, operational strategies to build CAT playbooks, and then was excited when I met the founder of RockRose Risk, which I'm proud to be a part of that team, because for the first time in my career, I get to help folks and communities pre-event, right? So before disaster strikes, while understanding as a homeowner myself the plight that everybody's going through with these raising rates and premiums and investing in your home and not getting recognized. And so it's rare opportunity for us to help reshape the market and trying to align everything that you just heard, verified mitigation efforts and home hardening, structure hardening, to bring in smarter insurance solutions, because frankly, I mean, something's got to change in this industry. And Erica touched on, what we do. If you want to jump to the next slide, this kind of outlines a little bit. This is meant to be more conversational, so I may not align with what's on with the slides. But yeah, so we are tech enabled. What we do, we're not one of those brokers that you call us and we shop and you get a quote in minutes. We need to spend time from a macro level down to a parcel level of the community, understanding, working closely with Eric and understanding like Truckee, the culture, and around wildfire mitigation, the investments that have got into it, and to understand, right, what's the regulations, what's the code, down to the parcel level, and then understanding that the structure of the home itself, what's been invested to drive business cases, if you will, to these carriers, and to show, hey, you're painting this area with a broad brush. And there's definitely something different about this home, about this community, that needs to be considered, and that needs to translate into dollars reduced from premium and from deductibles. So I'll step back a bit and talk about the founder of RockRose, because that's important. So Andrew Engler is the founder of RockRose Risk. He built Kettle. He was the founder of Kettle, which is the largest parametric wildfire underwriter on the West Coast, and their modeling, our modeling includes Kettle's parametric data, local mitigation inputs, like the Tahoe Central Sierra Initiative has some great data on projects and ongoing projects that are being done in the area, and then real-time vegetation and terrain data, and then from the customers themselves, and some of their reports and Firewise reports on what's been done from a hardening perspective. And so why is this happening, right? So why is the insurance market broken? And traditionally, from a wildfire perspective, a lot of the reinsurers use what's called AIR or RMS, and it simulates about they look back about 100 years of wildfire events, and not take to base actuarial data on risk ratings. And the reason that's flawed in this day and age is it doesn't reflect climate change conditions. It underrepresents modern mitigation efforts. And they assume it's a static landscape that ignores fuel breaks, defensible space, even ski slopes, right, or defensible space that aren't included in their modeling, or access egress from utility companies, right, that helps provide a halo around communities. So reinsurers end up raising rates or exiting states, or they overprice to help with margins, which then trickles down to the other markets, down to your admitted and standard carriers, and then it leaves consumers with few options who are in these areas that they wanted to live in, and they love their home and love the view and interact with the wilderness. And then insurance comes in, and it can create a financial strain. And so what we're seeing is like State Farm, Allstate, Farmers, Kemper, CSE, they're exiting. Markets in California are significantly scaling back. And last piece of data that we looked at in 2025, there's been an average premium increase of 17%, which has been approved. And then you're seeing from the Palisades fire and the impacts in California this year's date, about so far $39 billion in insured losses. And that's not including a lot of the new smoke claims that are starting to pour in. And then also, and I've been part of these strategies back in the day, what happens is you get into then torrential rain season, and you start to get mudslides, right, where in the burn scars that come in and impact homes, which then put insurance companies in a bind to determine primary cause of loss, and was it wildfire? Does it go back to that date of the wildfire? Is it a new loss? And then it creates landscape then for attorney lawsuits, litigation, and so it can end up being a mess. So there's a lot of regulatory changes that are underway. I'm seeing efforts to try to expedite those to keep up with market exits. So hopefully we see some changes. But the good news is you're seeing companies like ours and insurtechs and fintechs start to pop up, and you're seeing now more investment in innovative home hardening solutions. You're seeing more companies come in that have new ideas of home hardening or structure hardening. You're seeing, which I'll show you here in a bit, like companies like BurnBot that we work closely with that have emerging technology that come in and do fuel mitigation at a large scale. And so if you want to go to the next one on BurnBot, appreciate that. And so the disconnect has been that even communities that are doing the right thing, and even with hardened roofs, ember resistant vents, sprinkler systems, still getting non-renewed, mitigation's not baked into traditional pricing models, and carriers, they rely a lot on outdated scoring and sources, and so inevitably it trickles down. And what's the incentive, right? What's in it for me to go invest all this and harden my home, right? I mean, I want to do the right thing for the right reason, but in real life, things cost money, and we're required to have insurance, especially if you have a loan. So it's very very difficult situation, but there's a lot of folks. It's ripe for change, and hopefully it happens sooner than later. I know you heard a lot about structural hardening. Some of the things that we're seeing emerge is like BurnBot. We're seeing a lot of exterior sprinkler systems, different variations of that we've seen, like perimeter and roof mounted around the eaves also. And then fire retardant foam systems we're starting to see that have been implemented or deployed on like red flag days. And so for us, like our main thing is, we want to go out and ground truth the risk. We want to use our AI and our modeling, but we want to be that translation layer to go back to carriers. And we have had some on board. And I know you've seen like the Truckee Donner Association story, which is fantastic, right? That you've seen a little bit of that dam start to crack, where there's a way to connect the mitigation to reduction in premiums and to do some scenario-based modeling with flame links that, hey, if this is defensible space created and home hardening, it's less likely to burn, right? A fire needs three things to survive, right? It needs oxygen, needs fuel, and an ignition source. And so if you can take away fuel, right, there's no fire. Or if you could significantly reduce the fuel, you're going to have less probability of a fire. So if the standard market's not responding, we're creating our own way to bring insurance back and tying it into mitigation efforts. And a big argument we have for the carriers is, and using maybe their greed strings against them, is that, look, if you reward for mitigation and give some kind of discount, and we can show that discount is going to be reinvested back into ongoing mitigation, it's a win-win. It's a safe risk and a safe area to bet on, and we're required to have insurance, right? So the call to action for us is really like, if mitigation is encouraged or mandated, is there's got to be some kind of financial reward. And we're trying to fix the disconnect between verified risk reduction and insurance cost. And we've invited many carriers and reinsurers and regulators to help us work alongside us. We hope there's healthy competition so we can rebuild a smarter wildfire insurance market. So that's all I have. Thank you.